Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, August 21st. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. We begin tonight with California on fire and tens of thousands of residents on the run from hundreds of deadly and destructive wildfires. Sadly, at least 6 people have died in the fires up and down the state. Evacuations are underway, and it's not just the hot and humid weather making these firefights so difficult. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman explains.
We've burned 771,000 acres. That's greater than the state of Rhode Island.
CAL FIRE officials say there are more than 500 fires burning across the state, with the worst in Northern California. Already, some 120,000 residents have been evacuated from their homes.
We simply haven't seen anything like this in many, many years.
That's because of lightning strikes. Around 12,000 of them poured down over Northern California, igniting areas already hit hard by drought.
But we're putting everything we have onto this.
Officials say firefighters on the front lines are stretched thin, and since there's no major fires burning in San Diego County, at least 32 engines have been sent north.
In addition to that, we sent out dozers, we sent out hand crews and personnel.
But a wet winter and a dry summer have made conditions here ripe for wildfires, and local crews need to be ready.
We're just about maxed out as far as what we can send.
So if we were to get a lightning outbreak like they saw up in the Bay Area in the northern Sacramento Valley, we would have similar problems down here.
Alex Tardy with the National Weather Service says part of the reason we didn't see the lightning and the accompanying fires is because of the heat wave we're in.
In a way, it's shielding us. Ironically, it does the same thing with hurricanes. When parts of the United States are under big heat waves and domes of high pressure, the hurricane can't go through that, it goes around it. And we're seeing that with this tropical moisture. You know, it can't go through it. It goes around it. But unfortunately, it's not our backyard, but someone else suffers.
Tardy says the last time our state saw lightning strikes and fires on this scale was more than a decade ago in 2008.
The short answer is no, it's not usual. Some summers, you have no lightning outbreaks of this magnitude at all.
The lightning strikes in Northern California did not come with much rain, which is also contributing to the fire's spread. Tardy says we're not out of the woods for lightning strikes in San Diego County until next month. And after that is when the deadly Santa Ana winds roll in. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
A former San Diego News helicopter pilot who was killed while fighting fires is being remembered by his loved ones. 52-year-old Rancho Cucamonga resident Michael Fournier's helicopter crashed in Fresno County on Wednesday. His daughter, McKenna Fournier, spoke about the relationship they shared.
I was always excited when people asked me what my dad did. I was always so proud of him, and I hope he knows that. This moment, it was taken so quickly from us.
Fournier recently flew helicopters to perform repair work for SoCal Edison. The National Transportation Board is still investigating the cause of the crash. The county has just released the latest COVID-19 numbers. 8 more people have died from the virus, and there are 304 newly confirmed cases. The good news is we're still below the case rate threshold of 100 per 100,000. That puts us on track to stay off the state's watch list. On Monday, we're expecting to hear new guidelines about businesses reopening. The agency in charge of approving green cards and naturalizing new citizens could furlough over 60% of its workforce at the end of the month. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us that will leave thousands of immigrants in the San Diego area stuck in legal limbo.
U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services says it will be forced to furlough over 13,000 employees nationwide. The federal agency is mostly funded by fees it charges to immigrants to obtain green cards or become naturalized citizens. With those processes put on hold by the coronavirus pandemic, the agency faces a serious budget shortfall. But with both the House and Senate in recess until the end of the month, federal support for the agency now seems unlikely before the August 30th deadline for reverting the furloughs.
It's a very challenging time overall. If we go to the 30,000-foot level and we're looking at everything that's going on right now with immigration, furloughing of 67% of USCIS, more than doubling of the fees that USCIS is charging for naturalization. I mean, the hurdles are just very difficult to navigate through.
Catholic Charities of San Diego helps immigrants navigate the immigration system. Nadine Tapazada, who directs their immigrant and refugee services, says a furlough of this size will keep families separated and many people out of work for years, as these delays will reverberate through the system.
We're not talking here about, maybe it's an additional 4, 6, or 8 months. We're talking about years in order for people to be able to have some security with their immigration status and some footing as they try to live here in this country.
With thousands of people in San Diego set to have their work permits expire and others looking to naturalize before this November's elections, the furloughs at USCIS could have a massive impact on the political and economic future of the region for years to come. Max Nadler, KPBS News.
The 8 Marines and 1 sailor killed in a training accident last month were honored at a memorial today. Private service was held at Camp Pendleton. These pictures are from last week when the remains of the service members were flown to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware for burial. The accident happened when an amphibious assault vehicle sank in about 385 feet of water near San Clemente Island. The head of the county Republican Party issued a statement decrying racists today. It comes as an old animated video has surfaced that includes a photo of Hitler bobbing above the head of a young Tony Kravarik. Kravarik is the current chairman of the San Diego County Republican Party. In a joint project with independent investigative producer J.W. August, KPBS's investigative reporter Amita Sharma explores the impact of the video.
That blonde guy sporting dark shades is a young Tony Kravarik.
Well, it's pretty serious.
Local lawyer Jim McElroy was a longtime board member of the Southern Poverty Law Center, a civil rights legal advocacy group.
There's dancing Hitler, there's a swastika on someone's neck, there's a Sieg Heil salute. That's pretty serious stuff. We're talking about genocide. We're talking about the deaths of millions of people. That's not something to joke about.
The video containing Hitler imagery is meant to promote Fairlight, a group founded in the late 1980s in Sweden. Fairlight broke into video games, a practice called cracking, which was legal in Sweden at the time. Kravarik, who was stepping down in January as chairman of the local GOP, has acknowledged he was once a leader of the group. He refused numerous requests to comment for this story, but has not denied that he is one of the young men in the video. Rabbi Abraham Cooper, director of the Los Angeles-based Simon Wiesenthal Center's Global Social Action Agenda, has tracked online extremist speech for 3 decades. He says Kravarik should answer for the video.
I believe he owes everyone in San Diego and beyond an explanation.
The video runs for 2 minutes and 32 seconds and includes a difficult-to-read scroll that says in part, quote, "Now don't think that we are mega Nazis just because of the Hitler sprite," end quote. Both of Kravarik's sons appear to share their father's interest in politics and have used rhetoric associated with white nationalism. Kravarik's elder son, Victor Kravarik's Instagram page, recently displayed a cartoon of a green frog, a symbol of the white nationalist group called the Groyper Army.
They advocate for white America. They advocate an end of all immigration whatsoever.
McElroy also says Groypers rant a lot about America's population getting less white and what that might mean.
We're losing our cultural identity and heritage, which for some reason they don't believe includes people of color, but only white, Aryan, Europe-based people.
Victor Kravarik did not respond to requests for comment. And Oliver Kovarik, another Kovarik's son, recently wrote an opinion piece for the Union Tribune. Oliver discussed his hope that the Republican Party further embraces values like, quote, reverence for our history and an effort to uphold our national and cultural identity. McElroy says he believes the Union Tribune op-ed uses coded language.
And when people talk about cultural heritage, especially people on the right, they're talking about white heritage.
Oliver Kovarik refused KPBS's request to comment. Longtime Republican Supervisor Diane Jacob expressed alarm over Tony Kovarik's Hitler video, as did Republican congressional candidate Darrell Issa.
This video was inappropriate and just plain wrong then and now, and that for Mr. Kovarik, he truly has to explain why that doesn't represent who he is today.
UC San Diego political scientist Thad Kauser says he's stunned Kovarik hasn't jumped at the chance to explain himself.
I'm also surprised that every Republican in the county isn't lined up to condemn it, because that is the easiest, clearest, both from a moral imperative and also for a political imperative.
KPBS reached out to San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulkner, Republican supervisors Jim Desmond, Kristen Gaspar, Greg Cox, former San Diego City Councilman Carl DeMaio, as well as current and former leaders of the state Republican Party. None would comment. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
I'm truly sorry. That is what a former California police officer dubbed the Golden State Killer told his victims' families before being sentenced today. 74-year-old Joseph James D'Angelo received multiple life prison sentences for a decade-long string of rapes and murders that terrorized 11 counties. D'Angelo pleaded guilty in June to 13 murders and 13 rapes under a plea deal that avoided a death sentence. 5 months in prison is the sentence passed down to fashion designer Massimo Giannulli. He and his wife, actress Lori Loughlin, pleaded guilty in May to paying a $500,000 bribe to get their 2 daughters into USC as athletes. Loughlin was sentenced to 2 months in prison. Dozens of prominent parents and athletic coaches across the country are involved in the scheme that has been called Operation Varsity Blues. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, a Trump donor, was grilled on Capitol Hill today. Some postal workers and Democrats worry policy changes were designed to slow mail delivery as the agency prepares for a flood of mail-in election ballots this fall. Here's Whitney Wild.
During a hearing with U.S. lawmakers, Postmaster General and President Trump ally Louis DeJoy testified the U.S. Postal Service can manage a wave of mail-in ballots this fall.
I want to assure this committee and the American public that the Postal Service is fully capable and committed to delivering the nation's election mail securely and on time.
DeJoy faced harsh criticism after details emerged of major changes to the Postal Service, such as removing high-speed sorting machines and collection boxes and no longer prioritizing election mail. While the Postmaster General said this week the changes would be suspended, Democrats and others fear the new policies were designed to slow vote by mail, as the president has repeatedly and falsely claimed the process is rife with fraud.
There has been no changes in any policies with regard to election mail.
Will you commit there will be no post office closures or suspensions before November 3rd?
I confirm post office closures was not a directive I gave. That was around before I got it. I've suspended that until after the election.
Also under the microscope, a meeting between the president and DeJoy after DeJoy's appointment to lead the USPS in May. DeJoy insists they never addressed changes to the agency.
I have never spoken to the president about the Postal Service other than to congratulate me when I accepted the position.
In Washington, Whitney Wild, KPBS News.
The 2020 census is wrapping up next month, so volunteers are making a big push to make sure everyone is counted. Today, the United Way of San Diego County held 5 simultaneous car caravans from National City and Chula Vista up to San Marcos, Vista, and Escondido. Census takers started going door to door about 2 weeks ago. To date, the county is above 70% participation. The census deadline was recently pushed up to September 30th. which caused some confusion.
It's important to remember that regardless, we need to take the census today, and rolling this back could hurt its thoroughness and even produce inaccurate data, but will have lasting effects for the next decade.
And if you haven't filled out the census yet, you can do that online at my2020census.gov. You can also complete it by phone or return the paper document that's been mailed out. Just make sure it's postmarked by September 30th. The mayor's office says it will move forward with brokering a multi-billion-dollar energy franchise deal with a private utility, even though City Council couldn't come to an agreement on it. But KPBS SciTech reporter Shalina Chatlani reports community advocates have different plans.
I'm standing outside of 101 Ash Street in downtown San Diego. It's the former San Diego Gas and Electric headquarters. A number of climate change and community advocates have gathered here today to make calls for public power and for the city to not partner with San Diego Gas and Electric again.
Public power now! Public power now! We're paying $18,000 a day to pay for this uninhabitable building. The current franchise to SDG&E is delivering $1 million a day in profits, 50 times larger.
Climate change and community advocates here say the city is throwing away residents' tax dollars by partnering with the utility. They point to 101 Ash as an example. The city bought the building for around $300 million from Sempra Energy, SDG&E's parent company, but it turned out it was filled with asbestos. Similarly, they say residents pay SDG&E the highest electricity rates in the state. And now that the city's contract with the utility is expiring in January, these advocates are calling for a utility owned by the city, which they say will deliver cheaper rates.
Public power, we know, is the answer. That's not a guess. That's not my estimate. That's the fact.
A spokeswoman for SDG&E told KPBS that the utility has a strong record of delivering reliable energy and plans to submit a competitive bid for the energy deal. A few weeks ago, San Diego City Council members rejected 2 proposals to move forward with this energy agreement.
I'm going to vote no, and I'm just hoping that we find a better way to value what we have, which belongs to the people.
However, now that deal is on Mayor Kevin Faulconer's desk. Faulconer says he plans to go ahead with it, but members of this new activist coalition say they think they can stop it from happening. Cody Pedersen of the San Diego County Democrats for Environmental Action says it's the advocates who caused council members to vote no in the first place.
We knew that we were unlikely to get a vote for municipalization, and by unlikely I mean 0.00001%. However, we did believe that we could, if we hit it hard enough and put together a movement quickly enough, that we would be in a position to create a sort of fog of war and by hook or crook get our 5 votes to block. And that's, in fact, what you saw.
Now, Pedersen says they'll get that same voting block among council members again when the mayor's agreement comes up for discussion. Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
Well, your forecast for Southern California doesn't really feel a whole lot like a Southern California forecast. It's a little more humid out there. We have more moisture than normal, with some of this moisture kind of flinging into the neighborhood here with a connection to Genevieve, which had been at one point a Category 4 storm west of Mexico. Far, far weaker. Now, spotty thunderstorms are out there, and they're mainly impacting inland areas, but a couple of these are even brushing the coast at times late today, but also again tomorrow. Still going to be hot, but less extreme, so the heat is backing off a bit. You can see some improvements here with the heat advisories and excessive heat warnings trimmed back and really just restricted to areas to our north compared to where we had been in recent days. Now, it still will be a hot time. Daily record highs still being challenged into the weekend in parts of the interior, but we're beginning to see a little bit more of an improvement locally here. Fire danger is still a concern, not because of wind as much as just the fact that a lot of areas are dry farther to the east and northeast. Our locally higher humidity is going to be a little bit of a help here for us regarding perhaps reducing the fire danger. But again, lightning is always a concern that can kind of counteract that. Lightning still capable of producing wildfires, even when the dew point is a little bit higher, given the dry vegetation in place and the conditions that we're dealing with. 67 for your low in Ramona tonight. You can see we snuck in a thunderstorm near Mount Laguna. They'll be spotty, but there will be a few of them out there, and lightning is a hazard that can trigger wildfires Even during the day tomorrow, we have a stray thunderstorm near Mount Laguna. Over the higher elevations here, we don't want to marry that forecast just to that one location. But that's the flavor of our forecast here. Coastal areas should stay dry for the most part on Saturday, but spotty thunderstorms across the interior into early parts of next week. Dry, but a little less hot, so that's some good news. A quick look at those temperature forecasts. The coast backs down into the lower 80s, but still very warm out there. Inland areas from the low 90s dropping into the upper 80s for a couple of days. Still very warm next week. Mountainous areas, stray thunderstorms over the next 4 days. Temperatures not as warm as they had been. And we're back still around 108 Saturday, but back up to 112 by Tuesday in the deserts. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
The first 2020 political convention is a wrap, with Joe Biden officially becoming the Democratic presidential nominee. Next up, the Republican National Convention in Charlotte. Nadia Romero has a look at what we can expect next week.
I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
And with that, the Democratic National Convention came to a close. 4 nights of speeches, performances, and heart-wrenching stories, all done without massive crowds, fanfare, or balloon drops. Now it's the Republicans' turn. Vice President Mike Pence already pushing back on statements made in Biden's acceptance speech about the Trump administration's response to COVID-19.
The president keeps telling us the virus is going to disappear. He keeps waiting for a miracle. Well, I have news for him. No miracle is coming.
I got a news flash for Joe Biden. We think there is a miracle around the corner.
The coronavirus pandemic response will likely take center stage at the RNC. While this week the government's response was bashed, next week the ruling party will highlight it.
We believe it's very likely that we'll have 1 or more vaccines for the coronavirus before the end of this year. All of that's a tribute to President Trump's leadership.
Few speakers have been announced so far besides President Donald Trump, the Trump family, Pence, and 3 Trump supporters who made national news this year. Alice Johnson, a former federal inmate whose life sentence was commuted by Trump with the help of Kim Kardashian West, will also speak.
President Trump made me having a wonderful life possible, and I'm just so thankful to him.
At the White House, I'm Nadia Romero.
And we will carry the Republican National Convention here on KPBS next week. You can watch Evening Edition at 5:30 and 11 p.m. on KPBS 2. Jobs in the county are decreasing, but so is the unemployment rate. The rate in the region dipped to 12.3% in July, which is a 1.5% drop from the month before. The Employment Development Department suggests this simultaneous decrease could indicate that fewer people are actively looking for work or even looking outside the county. Local losses saw the biggest drop in government educational services, jobs such as school bus drivers, custodians, and cafeteria workers. Now, the unemployment rate at this time last year was 3.6%. One of San Diego's biggest tourist attractions might reopen soon. A partial reopening for SeaWorld has been approved by the county. Under the state's guidance for zoos, SeaWorld will be allowed to reopen outdoor sections of the theme park. Indoor aquariums and rides would remain off limits. SeaWorld has yet to make any announcement on its reopening plan. It's been closed since March. We talked to SDSU's Miro Kopik, who weighed in on the potential plan in this Friday Business Report.
This is a company that's in the middle of a turnaround. They're on their 4th CEO. They really need to jumpstart their business. Getting back in action now before a Legoland opens or other attractions open in Los Angeles gives SeaWorld an opportunity to be a focal point for tourists coming to San Diego or for local San Diegans to do something different with their weekdays or weekends. So it becomes really critical, and they're doing it without the more thrill rides, the roller coasters and things like that. This is going to be all outdoors, mostly animal shows. But what's good about that in particular, especially for local area residents, they know SeaWorld really as an aquatic park. And one of those things that's really critical is reinforcing that part of SeaWorld. That it really is about education or edutainment, and then people will be able to come back and enjoy the roller coasters when it's safe to do so.
The San Diego Padres have a new nickname after making MLB history.
in the air to right field, towards the corner. It's back. It's gone. Welcome to Slam Diego. Grand slam for Eric Hosmer. For the first time in Major League history, a team has hit a grand slam in 4 consecutive games, and that team is the San Diego Padres.
So exciting. Final score, Padres walk it off for an 8-7 victory, sweeping the Texas Rangers. And tonight, they take on the Houston Astros. Good luck to them. And that does it for Evening Edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we leave you now with music from Jesus Gonzalez, the latest local artist in our summer music series. Good night.
Etched in Stone is a song that was inspired by a trip I took to Hopi Land, which is this Native American reservation that's in northeastern Arizona. It belongs to the Hopi tribe. They've been out there for thousands of years, and I went and stayed there with them for about 2 weeks and learned so much. And so the message, the lyrics, and the music is all inspired by that one experience. So the message of Etched in Stone has a lot to do with our roots and returning back to our roots and returning back to a sense of essential self. There's a lot that piles on top of us as far as identity goes, but it's such an amazing feeling to break down so much of your identity so that you can find what's deep inside in its true rawest form.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.